Steve Jobs is one of the most iconic figures of the modern era. He was the founder of Apple, the creator of the iPhone, and the man who revolutionized the way we use technology. But beneath the surface of his success lies a darker side. Welcome to Words Move Worlds, a channel that explores the lives and legacy of famous people through their words and narratives. While a lot has been written about Steve Jobs and his impact on the world of tech, we explore the other side of Steve Jobs through the lens of his dark side. The dark side of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was a complex and controversial figure. He was undoubtedly a genius, but he also made some questionable decisions that had serious consequences for the people who worked for him and the world at large. In Walter Isaacson's biography of Jobs, he paints a picture of a complex and highly flawed individual. Jobs was supremely self-confident, comfortable taking big risks, and thought he had a unique set of talents. He was also mischievous and enjoyed lying, stealing, and pushing limits. He was a consummate conman who was willing to steal ideas from anyone, and he was known to lie to his colleagues and friends. Jobs' narcissism. Jobs' narcissism was evident in his relationships with others, his decisions, and the culture of Apple. He could be incredibly charming, but he also had a dark side that made him difficult to work with. Jobs often took credit for other people's ideas and sometimes even their work, which led to conflict within the company. In addition, he would often make harsh judgments about other people's ideas or products without considering all the facts or listening carefully enough before making a decision. Jobs' management style. Jobs' management style was often seen as autocratic. He would make decisions and expect everyone else to follow them, no questions asked. But this approach helped Apple become one of the most successful companies in history, so it's hard to argue with his methods, especially when you consider how much control he gave his employees over their own work environment and projects. Jobs believed that every employee should have a direct line of communication with him and that no one else should interfere between them unless absolutely necessary, which wasn't often. This meant that if you had an idea for something new at work or even just wanted feedback on something already in progress, all you had to do was walk down 2 floors from where you were working on whatever project it was and tell Steve about it yourself, instead of having someone else relay information back up through multiple layers first, before reaching him at last. The reality distortion field. The reality distortion field was a term coined by Steve Jobs' biographer to describe the way in which he could convince people to do things they wouldn't normally do. It was both a strength and a weakness, as it allowed him to get people on board with his vision but also led him down some bad paths. The most famous example of this phenomenon is when Jobs convinced John Sculley that Pepsi-Cola should buy Apple Computer instead of Atari, as Sculley had originally planned. In order to make this happen, he told him that he would be able to sell 50 million computers within 5 years, a number that seemed outlandish at the time but ended up being accurate once Apple released its next product line, the Macintosh 2 series. Jobs' legacy. Jobs' legacy will live on in Apple, and how his successes and failures will continue to shape the tech industry. The iPhone was a revolutionary product that changed how we use our phones, but it also came with some dark side effects, like how companies like Facebook use our data for advertising purposes without our consent or knowledge. Jobs' legacy is one of innovation and success, but it's also one of greed and corporate malfeasance. Jobs' controversial decisions. Jobs was known for making controversial decisions that were often seen as unethical. He fired people without warning, refused to acknowledge the paternity of his daughter, and even went so far as to sue other companies for using the same technology in their products. In fact, these decisions ultimately impacted Apple's success, but not always positively. The most obvious example of Jobs' questionable ethics is his treatment of employees. He often fired them without warning or explanation, including one employee who had been with Apple since its early days. While this may seem harsh at first glance, it actually helped keep turnover low and thus kept costs down, which was important when you're trying to build a company from scratch with limited resources. In addition to keeping costs down through layoffs and firings, Jobs also cut corners by delaying product launches until they were ready instead of releasing something half-baked just because it was on schedule. This meant waiting longer than competitors, but having better quality products overall once they launched into marketplaces worldwide. The enduring legacy of Steve Jobs. The dark side of Steve Jobs is a complex one, and it is difficult to reconcile his successes with his flaws. But it is important to remember that Jobs was a complex individual, and that his successes and failures were intertwined. He was a man of great ambition and drive, and he was willing to take risks and push boundaries to achieve his goals. He was also a man of great flaws, and his mischievousness and bullying were a part of his character. But it is his successes that will be remembered, and it is his legacy that will live on. If you like stories, quotes and lives of amazing people in history, consider subscribing and liking this video. Hit the bell notification for more videos from our channel.